And the group of rather bizarrely behaving people that were all the Eagle cult, as we call them affectionately at the Wildlife Center. You'll see these folks running around with the shirts that say Nesty on it, the Norfolk Eagle Support Team International. For those of you that don't know who they are, I'm going to introduce them before I introduce myself. Last year, we had a bald eagle chick brought to us from the Norfolk Botanical Garden. That nest was covered by a webcam that was sponsored by a number of agencies, including the Botanical Garden and one of the television stations down there, and the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. So there were 150,000 people around the world watching that nest. And there was much drama and all of this sort of thing, and I won't go into all that right now, but the bottom line was on April 23rd or 24th, as I recall, here finally a chick is hatched. And then within a couple of weeks, it's obvious that there's something sort of stuck on the side of the chick's beak, and that something continued to grow, and it became very obvious that it was in fact a lesion, not really a tumor as such, but an unnatural growth that had started. So the state wildlife veterinarian went down. Now bear in mind, this is under the watchful eyes of 150,000 of his closest friends worldwide, all of whom are tech savvy. The former state wildlife veterinarian is actually one of my former colleagues from the Wildlife Center of Virginia. He was our director of veterinary services, went to work for the state. He went down there. They pulled the bird out of the nest, took one look at it and said, nope, this bird's got to go to the hospital. They sent it to the Wildlife Center of Virginia. About 20 minutes later, we were getting emails from about 75,000 members of what has now become Nesty. About half of them had very clear ideas about how we ought to be managing the case that they shared rather freely with us. And the bottom line on it was that the bird could not be released because the lesion was a viral lesion called avian pox, and it caused the growth plates where the beak grows out. It's supposed to grow evenly out, just like your fingernails. It damaged the growth plate on the left side of the cere, and so the beak grows normally on the right, abnormally on the left, so now he's got a crossed beak. And the bird would not survive in the wild, and about 3 weeks ago, we made the announcement that all of us had sort of been anticipating. Holy smokes, they're still coming in. Oh, my Lord. Yeah, that must be the other chapter of the cult. But the bottom line is that we now have all these new friends. Now we had to negotiate with them right away, saying, if you will please stop emailing us so we can go back to taking care of the bird, we'll post things on the internet that will keep you posted about the progress of the bird, which we did on a daily basis. And these folks, many of them here, have been many more who are not here, have become so engaged with the work of the Wildlife Center that tomorrow is the first, what we'll call annual, I may eat those words. Well, we just call it the first. Let me hedge my bet. The first Nesty Day at the Wildlife Center of Virginia. So some of these folks have come in from great distances to see the center and to actually meet the bird that started all of this stuff. So in any case, but now, kind of get back on track here now that you know who some of the wackos are in the crowd. No, we love them. We wouldn't say it if we didn't. But I'm Ed Clark. I'm president of the Wildlife Center of Virginia. This is Mattis Slavitz, one of the doctors, one of the veterinarians at the Wildlife Center of Virginia. Mattis is from Estonia, actually, here on a one-year internship for clinical medicine and diagnostics. And a great deal of work in Eastern Europe on brown bears and eagles and other things. So this is his first eagle release with us, so we're glad to have him come along. This particular bird that we're going to be releasing, I'll tell you about in a second, but for those of you who have kind of wandered in and like, what's going on here, the Wildlife Center of Virginia is one of the world's leading teaching and research hospitals for wildlife medicine. We've been around almost 27 years, and when I say we are a teaching and research hospital, we train veterinarians, veterinary students, and wildlife professionals from every single vet school in the United States and Canada and from 32 other countries. that come to our facility in Waynesboro, Virginia to study, to work, and to learn. Now that doesn't even include the international work that we do and the field work that we do, which really expands our reach quite a lot. We do a lot of work in Latin America particularly. So when we come to the care of individual animals, it's really important not only that we figure out what's wrong with the given animal so that we can fix it, but for us it's very, very important to find out what is wrong in a larger sense with the environment that caused that animal to be injured or sickened or damaged in some way. And that often is as important or more important than caring for the individual animal. Now we still give that state-of-the-art care to every patient, but just fixing the patient is not enough for our work. So the Wildlife Center has collaborated with many people over the years. We work very closely with the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as a number of the universities. And a couple of our colleagues here from up from Blacksburg are the real experts in terms of what's going on in the nest, because it takes a real special breed of wacko to climb a tree and go into an eagle's nest with eagles in that nest. And that's what our colleagues here have done. And every now and then, in getting out and finding their work, they find animals, eagles, that have been injured. And that's the case with this particular bird. This nest was in Warren County, up near Front Royal, Virginia, and along the Shenandoah River. This bird has actually been injured quite a while. We believe that he was injured in the nest undoubtedly before it was ready to fledge, which is not all that uncommon. In fact, the bird we released here last week had a very similar injury, different part of the body. This bird had a broken or fractured tibia tarsus, the leg bone, and the leg was not working properly. And we also found that this particular bird, they found, and we were informed, it was discovered that this particular bird has very, very high levels of mercury in its feathers and talons, which is an indicator of problems with the food source, quite honestly. And we know very well that the Shenandoah River, particularly the South Fork of the Shenandoah River, is heavily contaminated with mercury as a result of manufacturing that took place in Waynesboro, Virginia during the early part of the 20th century on up into the 1950s, well into the 1950s, and that's still being studied. So we've been told that, well, let's see, how can I say this without being too pejorative about all eagles? Eagles are not necessarily the brightest bulbs on the avian Christmas tree. They tend to be sort of linear thinkers, but as compared to something like a vulture, let's say, or a parrot. But no, of course, we tend to think of eagles as sort of direct. You know, you put a wall in front of them, they want to fly there, they're going to try and fly through it anyway. But this particular bird has been a very great challenge to us. He was in pretty rough shape when he came in. He did sort of take a nosedive as he'd been in captivity, so he was in intensive care and really undergoing some very, very intensive treatment as we repaired the fracture and then got the bird back to the shape that he's in today. This bird is ready to go back to the wild, I can assure you. When Mattis and one of our other veterinarians were carrying the cage down the hall, the cage was jumping up and down. So it's hard to say what we're going to find when we pull it out of there. Let me also introduce our hostess. Mushi Fisher this is her beautiful farm. Mushi and Fred are very good friends at the Wildlife Center, and we brought an awful lot of eagles here. And a lot of folks wondered, you know, well, this bird came from the Shenandoah River, which is part of the Potomac system. Why did we bring it to the James? Well, first of all, eagles migrate, so if this bird wants to go back to the Potomac watershed, he'll be back there before we're back at the Wildlife Center. But the bottom line is that these birds move around quite a lot. This bird has never been out of the nest wild, following its parents, looking for its own food. Right across the river from us is the James River National Wildlife Refuge. It's over 4,000 acres of federal land that has been set aside specifically to protect eagle habitat. This area of the James River, very wide, relatively shallow, and very full of fish.